One, did the Supreme Court of the United States just authorize the President of the United States to mobilize SEAL Team 6 to take out his political rival? And if so, liberals ask, why doesn't Biden just take out Trump? Two, it feels like we're on the edge, that the dystopian visions have gotten so vivid. It feels like we're on the edge of something big. This feels like not just a political Super Bowl, but the Super Bowl scene from Batman. It feels like the next few months in American politics are big and bad. Three, why is the United States of America so bad at soccer? We bomb out of Copa America. Can the Will Cain Show fix U.S. soccer? It is the Will Cain Show, streaming live at foxnews.com, on the Fox News YouTube channel, the Fox News Facebook page, and always on demand wherever you get your audio entertainment, at Apple, Spotify, or at Fox News Podcast. You can also listen to the Will Cain Show on terrestrial radio, market to market, coast to coast. You can watch us every day, 12 o'clock Eastern Time. Set reminders, subscribe, leave comments at YouTube, at Will Cain Show. Just subscribe on YouTube, at Will Cain Show. You know, there is a saying, be careful, you might just become what you hate. I did a quick Google because I wanted to know who kind of came up with that idea. I don't know. But I do know that when you go to Google, it offers you the answer to this question. What does it mean to become what you hate? And the answer, according to Google, reads as follows. Through being so concentrated on what we despise and trying our best to avoid becoming said thing, we inevitably become it. We lose ourselves in this spiral of hatred and resentment to such a degree that the same thing we dislike becomes ingrained into our character due to spending so much time dwelling on it. I think the left has been dwelling on Donald Trump. And I think Joe Biden just might become what he hates. Joe Biden gave a press conference last night to address the Supreme Court's decision that presidents do, in fact, have immunity for official acts and absolute immunity for constitutional duties. Joe Biden said, very eloquently, I dissent. In defense of our democracy, I dissent. But something was unique about this speech. Joe Biden was orange. Orange man bad? Orange man good? The internet has taken over. It's been blessing us with memes. Like the following. Just take a look at one of these really quickly. Two-a-days, Tinfoil Pat, Young Establishment, James. You can look at Biden in this meme last Thursday night in the CNN presidential debate. Gray, ghost-like, a bit of a corpse. And then last night, as someone said, looks like a Tupperware container that left spaghetti in for about a week, absorbed all the orange, absorbed all the red. And then it's got Ewan McGregor as a young Obi-Wan Kenobi. You have become the very thing you swore to destroy. Obviously somebody said, man, we looked bad on Thursday night. Break out the bronzer. And hey, man, who am I to criticize someone for a little bit of makeup? It's part of my job description. But I think it's fair, fellas, to Joe Biden has become what he hates. Let's dive into the memes. Let's explore the new phenomenon of orange man good coming up in a little bit here on the Will Cain Show. But first, let's get into whether or not the Supreme Court of the United States has just authorized the President of the United States to use SEAL Team 6 to assassinate his political rival. Let's get into that with story number one. He is the Attorney General of Missouri. It's Andrew Bailey, who, by the way, helped bring before the Supreme Court of the United States a case last week that was very important to anyone who is a defender of free speech. And that was the case that hoped to keep the government of the United States from using third parties like social media companies from censoring us on X, on Facebook, on YouTube, on social media. And he joins us now here on the Will Cain Show. Thanks for being here, Mr. Attorney General.
Thanks for having me on, Will. I appreciate it.
I'm glad to have you. Beautiful backdrop of flags, American and Missouri behind you there. You're obviously the Attorney General of Missouri. You're well-versed in constitutional law. You're not just well-versed. You're bringing them to the forefront. Before we get into your case, I would just love your reaction to the decision yesterday. It's interesting, Mr. Attorney General, that, Jen Psaki, I somehow ended up on her Twitter feed and her X feed, and she was talking still about the debate. And I was like, I'd be curious what her audience is saying, because she's still kind of like surprisingly saying, wow, this was really bad on Biden. It wasn't all his advisors. It was bad on Biden. And her audience was like, why are you talking about this? Water under the bridge. Do you realize the Supreme Court of the United States just destroyed democracy? And so I think it's important that we put it into proper context. What do you make of what happened yesterday at the Supreme Court?
The Supreme Court said what we always knew, which is that the president is immune for behavior that he conducts in his official capacity as president. The founders gave him broad authority to react to crises, both foreign and domestic, and to enforce the laws given to him by Congress. He's got to have the latitude in the law to be able to fulfill that broad authority. And, a couple of observations from the Biden camp. Number one, surprised that President Biden was willing to miss the early bird special and hold the press conference at the time he did. 4 or 5 minutes, maybe, no questions. Well done, President Biden. But I'll say this, if anyone should be popping champagne, it's Joe Biden. How many state attorneys general and red prosecutors were ready to prosecute him for conspiring to violate immigration laws, conspiring and aiding and abetting in the fentanyl and human trafficking crisis emanating from the southern border? If anything, he should be celebrating, not bemoaning this opinion. Again, this is just the proper interpretation of the Constitution as it was written and enacted.
Well, it strikes me, not just the hubris of, well, I've done nothing wrong, so I should never need this protection, but they don't see the actual decision. First of all, isn't it fair to say, I think, this is a presumption on both of our parts, but it's fair to say that very few people who are, hyperventilating about this decision over the last 36 hours have actually read the decision. They don't know what it had to say. But it's not just that Joe Biden doesn't think he'll ever be the subject of a DOJ prosecution. It's just that for them, it's not about the presidency. It's not about the law. It just seems to fit into this, larger tactical and strategic mindset of anything to get Donald Trump. And this just got in the way of getting Donald Trump. Yeah,
they hate Donald Trump more than they love this country. And I say that because they're willing to undermine the rule of law, subjugate constitutional protections that are intended to protect all of us from the government, and yet they're going to weaponize the government to go after one individual, and they're hurting all Americans in the process. If they can do it to President Trump, they can do it to any of us. Shame on them. And Missourians are being harmed in the process. Anyone who had an inclination to hear from or engage with the Trump campaign has been limited in their ability to participate in a national election in the heat of a presidential campaign, in the most consequential presidential election in this nation's history, because of a rogue prosecutor and a collusive judiciary in the state of New York. That's true also with Biden's crooked DOJ and the rogue prosecutor in the state of Georgia. This is all lawfare emanating from President Biden. And as you've pointed out, the goal was never to obtain a legally valid conviction. The goal was always to tether President Trump to a courtroom, eventually sentence him, and silence him in the process. It's to interfere with the election. That's why we're fighting back.
I've been interested in the number of institutions, and I think Joe Biden's speech last night, as you pointed out, just 5 minutes of it, but Joe Biden's speech last night does incredible damage to one of the most important institutions in our country. I mean, for all the talk about Donald Trump and his attacks on, I don't know, the FBI, or Donald Trump. How about this? Donald Trump and his lack of fidelity to NATO as an example of him, defying norms and institutions. I continue to be shocked at the institutions that are truly integral to our republic, our constitutional republic, that they're willing to throw under the bus to save democracy. I want to come back to that idea of save democracy in just a moment. But just as a quick illustration, you've been at the forefront. We'll talk about it in a minute. The First Amendment, sacrificed at the altar of saving democracy. The Supreme Court of the United States, sacrificed at the altar of saving democracy. And saving democracy has, I think, as you were talking, it becomes clear, it's a euphemism for stopping Donald Trump. So anything that will stop Donald Trump is saving democracy. And I think they've made that very clear because they talk in those terms, right? Like Donald Trump brings us to the edge of authoritarianism. He's a direct threat to democracy. What I'm curious about your opinion on is these are some pretty big Rubicons to cross, like the delegitimization of the Supreme Court of the United States. Do you think they can cross back? Do you think that after Donald Trump, they'll quit burning down institutions? Or is this just now, I just wonder if it's not now bigger than Donald Trump. If it's not just about the consolidation of power at large instead of just stopping one man. It's true they're obsessed with Donald Trump, but has it not metastasized in absolute power?
No, I think Pandora's box has been opened. They're in an infinitely regressive death spiral again. These are people that hate Donald Trump because he started an America First movement. He wanted to fight to make America great again. Think about how much he expanded the base of the Republican Party and took it in areas it's never even imagined it could go. He started a movement. He's at the forefront of the movement, and the movement will live beyond him. We're thankful that he started it. They hate him for it, but there are people who still love this country and still care about our constitutional rights and freedoms and our institutions. And saying that President Trump somehow rejected those institutions or, went against normative behavior is like saying that the Kansas City Chiefs shouldn't participate in the NFL draft because they just won the Super Bowl. No. First of all, it's not even a good example because the Chiefs actually won the Super Bowl, whereas the status quo has failed large swaths of the American people, to include here in Middle America and Missouri. But number two, you should always be trying to find ways to get better. And that's what President Trump has done for America and will continue to do for America. And the left hates him for that. They don't want America as it exists or has existed. They want a one world government, fealty to authoritarianism. COVID was also kind of the Trojan horse that got the enemy behind the gate and introduced them to expanded, centralized control of thought, of deed, of speech. They want to expand upon those principles. You see that in the Missouri v. Biden case. You see that in the lawfare against President Trump. They're willing to undermine every institution in this country in order to retain power. It's never been about truth. It's always been about control.
Congratulations. Here with Missouri Attorney General Andrew Bailey here. Congratulations on working the Kansas City Chiefs into that conversation. I'm sure it will help with your electoral prospects in the future. By the way, while I've got you, Missouri is like one of these interesting no man land states. Like, what are you? Are you Midwestern? Are you Southern? Like, what is you? You are even more than Kentucky. Like, I think Kentucky, Oklahoma, Missouri, you're in the no man's land, like border states. What are you culturally? But you might be the bullseye of the no man's land. I think you're probably, I don't know. Every time I want to say you're Southern, St. Louis feels Midwestern. So I don't know what you guys are in Missouri.
It's a unique and culturally diverse state. I would say we're Midwestern, but think about this. We've got the westernmost eastern city in St. Louis. We've got the easternmost western city in Kansas City. We've got Springfield, Missouri, and Southwest Missouri that looks very Bible Belt. We've got Southeast Missouri from Cape Girardeau south that looks more like SEC country. And so, yeah, I mean, it's a culturally diverse and rich state, and I'm proud to call it home.
All right, you brought it up, Missouri versus Biden. So despite the celebration, I think, for those who understand the rule of law, this was a big day yesterday at the Supreme Court. But last week, there was a very disappointing decision, I think, for many of us at the Supreme Court as well, and it was yours. It was a 6-3 decision where they said that the Biden administration, where the federal government can exert influence on social media companies to well, they say it wouldn't be a limitation of the First Amendment, but a limitation of free speech, right? So what do you make of the way the Supreme Court came down on the case that you helped champion?
Well, I think the mainstream media has gotten the headlines completely wrong. It's 180 degrees opposite of what they're saying. I think there's a lot to like in the opinion. Look, first and foremost, I would prefer there be a preliminary injunction against further government censorship on big tech social media platforms, but the fight for the First Amendment is far from over. And if anything, we can look to the future and realize that we've been sent back down to the trial court for merits discovery with broad authority to continue to root out the vast censorship enterprises. I want to make a couple points here. Number one, the court explicitly found that the government had, in fact, coerced big tech social media corporations into silencing American voices in violation of the First Amendment. We now have precedent to show that what they did was wrong. The court merely found that the evidence was limited to the years 2020 and 2021, and that we couldn't show at the present time, based on the limited evidence we had available during the preliminary stages of the litigation, that the censorship was ongoing. That's why we're going to get more evidence. And let me ask this. Have you ever seen an instance in which the government starts trampling on people's rights and voluntarily rolls back, where government grows and mushrooms exponentially and then suddenly recedes? That doesn't happen organically. In a vacuum, government will continue to grow. I am confident that the evidence will lead us to an expansion in that vast censorship enterprise. They've gotten a taste and they can't stop now. That's why this merits discovery phase is going to be so important to go out and continue to build a wall of separation between tech and state. The fight for the First Amendment is just getting started. This was a preliminary injunction at a preliminary stage of the litigation. The litigation is far from over.
Well, I agree with you. The fight for the First Amendment will be ongoing. It could be as soon and as recent as whatever happens over the next couple of months in anticipation of the 2024 presidential election, because we've seen it with every election cycle. And I mean, we saw it with COVID, and then we saw it with Hunter Biden's laptop. And I'm really concerned about what we're going to see here now, probably less on X, but in all the other social media platforms, and the role the government plays behind the scenes. I've always been of the, I'm sure you are as well, Mr. Attorney General, but the argument is the government has a bully pulpit, and a suggestion from the government isn't simply a suggestion, right? I remember this back when, do you remember I can't remember the name of the documentary or the filmmaker, but when Barack Obama blamed, I think it was the Arab Spring on a Muslim filmmaker who offended much of the Middle East. To me, that was like, wow, that's at the very least chilling on free speech for the president of the United States to say, hey, you really shouldn't have done that, right? You shouldn't have insulted Muhammad because look at the results. That's chilling. And what we're talking about here and what you've brought to light is way beyond chilling. It's coercion. It's saying, hey, this is bad stuff. You should take a look. The implication being, take it down.
Yeah. Well, and the government actually threatened big tech social media platforms. I mean, if you remember on the White House lawn, the president himself, President Biden, said that Facebook was killing people for not censoring more. They threatened repeal of Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act, the cash cow that has allowed big tech social media to become essentially an oligarchy, insulated from any kind of legal claims against them. They threatened antitrust action against big tech social media platforms. Those were direct coercive arguments against big tech that resulted in big tech changing the terms and conditions of their censorship regime. And certainly big tech understood themselves to be cajoled and coerced. Look at the emails that Congressman Jordan has released as part of his investigation from the Judiciary Committee, where internal to big tech, you can see the ripple in the pond effect, where Meta, Facebook, others are saying, oh, yeah, look, we wouldn't have changed that, but the government told us we had to, and that we don't want to bring the hammer down on us. So clearly there was coercion here. It specifically targeted American voices. 100% of the American voices targeted were conservative voices, and 100% of the speech that was censored was core political speech, thus establishing a violation of the First Amendment. You're right. It will be ongoing if we don't continue to push this litigation forward. And that's why I'm so energized to get back down to the trial court and continue to fight to erect that wall of separation between tech and state.
And you're also bringing litigation, from what I understand. Are you bringing something regarding the prosecution of Donald Trump in the state of New York and also Joe Biden's student loan forgiveness programs?
Yeah, and they're really flip sides of the same coin. They're weaponization of the government to achieve a political aim. On the one hand, with student loans, President Biden has already been told by the Supreme Court he has no authority to redistribute $500 billion in student loan debt. That damages Missourians to the tune of north of $45 million. We filed suit against his Plan A, put a stop to it at the United States Supreme Court 1 year ago this month. He went back to Plan B, is now willfully flaunting the authority of the United States Supreme Court, bragging about how it's going to do it anyway, and yet somehow President Biden is the sacred guardian of democracy? No way. Not when he's, usurping a co-equal third branch of government. So we filed suit again, same damages, and we got a nationwide preliminary injunction just a week ago to put a stop to it. I'm not going to let Joe Biden saddle working Missouri families with Ivy League debt. On the lawfare issue, it's the flip side of the same coin. On one hand, President Biden's trying to buy votes. On the other hand, he's trying to take a political opponent off the campaign trail. We know there's a collusive relationship between the crooked Department of Justice when they deployed Matthew Colangelo, the third-ranking official at DOJ and former DNC consultant, to lead Alvin Bragg's trial court prosecution in this illicit witch hunt. And so we're filing suit to redress our grievance, the state of Missouri's grievance. We have a right to participate in a national election on equal footing, absent a rogue prosecutor and collusive judiciary taking a presidential candidate off the campaign trail and silencing that candidate. So this is an important fight and one worth making.
I wonder, though, I mean, you ran into the issue of standing when it came to the First Amendment issues. If you won't run into a similar issue from the Supreme Court, what is your standing to stop something happening in the state of New York?
Well, the standing is that Missouri has electors who have been selected by our parties who are supposed to go to a convention and cast their ballots for their chosen presidential candidate. And if they're denied access to that candidate because he's either in a courtroom or on house arrest or on probation or doing community service or, God forbid, sentenced to prison, and or they can't hear from that presidential candidate because the court has imposed a gag order, well, that violates our rights as a sovereign state to participate in the national election.
All right, we'll see if the Supreme Court or first lower courts are sympathetic to that argument. So let me end this where we began. I gave a hypothetical. It's not my hypothetical. It's not even these insane liberal commentators who we'll get into in just a moment here on the Will Cain Show's hypothetical. Sadly, it's actually a hypothetical that came from a Supreme Court justice, Justice Sonia Sotomayor. So I'll ask you the hypothetical. Now, with this kind of immunity, could the President of the United States deploy SEAL Team 6 to take out his political rivals? Assassination and then no prosecution because immunity for the president.
Of course not. That's absurd. The president is immune for official acts that are part of the core responsibility of the presidency. Assassinating political opponents is not a core responsibility of the president. But if the president needs to deploy Navy SEALs to kill terrorists overseas or somewhere else, he's authorized to do that under our Constitution, and he's provided some level of immunity to protect him, to react to an emergency, to defend all of us.
A hypothetical that is actually played out in real life, by the way, as you just described. And the president in that situation that you just described, could you take out a terrorist, in this case an American citizen, and by the way, another American citizen who was not adjudged guilty of anything, a terrorist's 16-year-old son? Can you take him out with a drone and remain immune? The answer to that has been and is yes, and that president's name was Barack Obama. So despite all the hyperbole, we actually seen this play out in real life. The Attorney General of Missouri, Andrew Bailey, thank you so much, Mr. AG, for joining us here today on the Will Cain Show.
Thanks, Will. Appreciate you.
All right, glad to have you there. It's really crazy, the reaction. I told you about that Jen Psaki Twitter feed. I mean, it makes sense that they would want to move on from the debate. Let's just move on. Can we move on? It would make sense, but they've replaced it with this absolute dystopian vision of America based upon what happened yesterday at the Supreme Court of the United States. Let's get into it, because to me, it's getting really dangerous. Like, this type of conversation, is it just keyboard warriors, or is it setting us up for something really bad? That's next on The Will Cain Show.
From the Fox News Podcasts Network.
I'm Ben Domenech, Fox News contributor and editor of the Transom.com daily newsletter, and I'm inviting you to join a conversation every week with the smartest thinkers out there about the issues Americans face and where we're going as a nation. This show will feature deep dive interviews with newsmakers and some of your favorite Fox News analysts. I hope you'll join me as we dive into the fray. It's the Ben Domenech Podcast.
Subscribe and listen now by going to foxnewspodcasts.com or wherever you download podcasts.
July 16th on Fox. We're deep in the heart of Texas, where the game's biggest stars align for the Midsummer Classic.
Stars are everywhere. Caught by Aaron Judge. He is Superman. Harper, the swing of his life.
The MLB All-Star Game, July 16th on Fox.
From the Fox News Podcasts Network.
Hey, this is Trey Gowdy, host of the Trey Gowdy Podcast. Every Tuesday, you'll hear what's on my mind. Plus, Every Thursday, there's a special bonus episode where we answer the questions that are on your mind. Make sure to spend your Tuesdays and Thursdays with Trey. Subscribe now at foxnewspodcast.com or wherever you download podcasts. Hope to see you.
America's listening to Fox News.
You guys up to? It's beginning to feel like a dystopian novel. It's beginning to feel like something really bad is happening. Lawfare fails. A presidential candidate fails, putting us on the doorstep of Donald Trump, and that puts us on the doorstep of what it feels like something really bad and dystopian. It is the Will Cain Show, streaming live at foxnews.com, terrestrial radio, market to market, coast to coast, on demand, Spotify, Apple, and on YouTube. Jay Quick on YouTube says, Will Cain has reasonable discussion with Destiny and David Pakman. Also, Will Cain, Democrats hate America. You know, that comment doesn't make me mad. It doesn't make me defensive. It makes me actually self-reflective. And it's part of the reason I want to have someone like Destiny come on here on the Will Cain Show. Destiny as a placeholder. Less convinced about David Pakman. As bring people in who have honest disagreement. I do want to check myself. You can get inside your own head. You can get inside your own X feed. You can get inside your own bubble. And you need to have that checked. But I will tell you, inside my own head, inside my own bubble, inside my own X feed, it's getting really dystopic. Now, Young Establishment James and Tinfoil Pat and Two-A-Days Dan, you know, I'm not sure they all agree with me. So what I mean by that is I want to bring in disagreement wherever I can. I want to check myself. So here, I'll have these guys, and I'll have you watching at home. Check me. Just let me give you an example, okay? Let me give you an example of the conversation that's taking place today after the decision by the Supreme Court of the United States. Let's start with Harry Sisson. Harry Sisson is a I don't know, he's an influencer. I don't know if he's a paid Biden surrogate, and I don't know what his fame is beyond the internet, but I know he is successful influencer. After the Supreme Court of the United States decision yesterday, he posted the following. Let's put it up for the audience to see. He put it on X. So according to the Supreme Court, Biden could now send in SEAL Team 6 to take all of them out. He can send in the military to take out Trump. He has immunity for official acts now. This has become a thing, this SEAL Team 6 thing, right? I just want you to think about the progression of language, progression of rhetoric, the dystopian hyperbole. And I'm going to come back to what Jay Quick had to say. Am I in my own bubble? Do Democrats hate America? I think what Democrats hate is Donald Trump, truly, viscerally, to the extent that Joe Biden has become Donald Trump. Let's just take another look at one of those memes really quick. Joe Biden has become orange. You become what you hate. The internet always does its thing. Joe Biden as an Oompa Loompa, full-on orange, green hair, white eyebrows. And look, I mean, I get it. I know you could do it with Donald Trump, and you have over the past decade. But here we go. Now we're doing it with Joe Biden. I think it's self-evidently true. Democrats hate Donald Trump. The problem is that Donald Trump has become a placeholder for anything now. And in order to stop Donald Trump, you will do anything, not to say that you will stop Donald Trump, but to save democracy. You'll do anything. And I do think that you have to look in the mirror and go, well, what won't I sacrifice to, quote unquote, save democracy? So as you kind of descend into this dystopia, you say, where does it start? I mean, who's Harry Sisson? He's a nobody, right? I mean, there's YouTube comments. There's others that are echoing what he has to say, right? Take a look. It's all over this SEAL Team 6 thing. This is our feed, I think. This is on YouTube. I can't read that long handle, but okay, Biden should send in SEAL Team 6 to Mar-a-Lago. Mar-a-Lago. I always do that. It's Mar, Spanish, lake, sea, not mare, like a horse, female horse. Demigod says, President Biden, on the phone, yes, can I speak with the leader of SEAL Team 6? I saw an actress, I think, non-binary, 1 million followers saying, do it, Biden. Take out Trump. Take him out. You now have immunity, and he is Hitler in 1940. Okay, again, who are these people, right? It's just commentators. And back to the guys now. Man, that's what you said 2 days in our group text chain. You're like, come on, it's just S posting. It's just keyboard warriors saying stuff, right?
Yeah, I mean, I see this all the time.
Don't worry, tinfoil. Hold on. Just because you got a profile shot, you're turning sideways. You got to make that face. You're allowed to relax, tinfoil Pat. Got caught on camera.
Relaxing. I was trying to watch the show on the other screen.
You think it's just all... you think it's just all keyboard warriors 2 days?
I just think, like, especially after the debate, everyone's like, oh, the world's going to end. Who cares who's going to win president? You know, it's just like this doomsday thing that just keeps going on. And I think it's a lot of stuff. It's like what you said earlier to me also. It's what you're seeing on social media. You know, it doesn't really reflect real life all the time. So, I mean, people are getting scared and they talk about civil war and things like that. But I think we're just seeing it online. And in real life, it's not as much as that as you might think it is.
All right. Well, first of all, I had a friend say, what's with these names you call the guys on your show? I'm like, well, what's it? They're nicknames. She said, they're really long. It's true. Your nicknames are long. 2-a-days Dan, Young Establishment James, and Tinfoil Pat. It takes a long time to say it. And by the way, she had never heard of tinfoil. Like, people know what it means to be tinfoil, right? To wear a tinfoil hat.
Yeah.
And that's why it so perfectly fits. Tinfoil Pat. Okay, listen. And this is what I like having you around. I think that you are a bit of a casual. And I don't say that.
Wow.
I don't, Dan. I don't, as casual as you can be working at Fox News. I don't say that derisively. I think you have a copacetic nature that says, okay, it's all going to be all right. These political nuts always take everything too far. And I think that's okay. I don't mind that. But I think you also have to dig your rudder in, right? You can't float on the top of the surface always because there's more going on in the streams below the surface of the river. And I think that if you put it into some context, you know, there's been an attempt on the life of a Supreme Court justice. You know that, right? Like Justice Brett Kavanaugh. Crazy dude went with a backpack and tried to kill Kavanaugh. I remain shocked there's been no real attempts that we know of on the life of Donald Trump. But the point is, when you ratchet up this rhetoric at some point and you say democracy is at stake and you say we're on the edge of 1940, again, maybe just a crazy person on the internet, but this is a bit of rhetoric that's become a bit of a chorus. You put people into a mindset, and it doesn't take an entire civil war. It takes one crazy person, right? It takes one person to assassinate the Archduke Ferdinand, and then before you know it, the cascade and the dominoes start to fall and you're in World War I, right? It takes one crazy person to mobilize some tinderbox that's underneath the surface. And what I think is more concerning than the keyboard warriors is where they're taking their cues from. And so let me play you this from the Supreme Court Justice of the United States, Sonia Sotomayor. She is the one painting this we are destroying democracy. Donald Trump is about to take over. This is during oral arguments. So this was before the decision. She wrote her dissent yesterday. But she was setting up her dissent during oral arguments, and she said the following to Trump's attorney.
If the president decides that his rival is a corrupt person and he orders the military or orders someone to assassinate him, is that within his official acts for which he can get immunity?
There you go. So it's not just keyboard warriors. It's not just crazy people. It is the Supreme Court, a justice on the Supreme Court of the United States. I saw the other day, we had on Critical Drinker, Will Jordan on the show, and people in the comments who don't watch the Will Cain Show every day, like, Will Cain, put down your phone. How rude when you're talking to guests. I'm scrolling my phone. I keep notes on my phone, for the record, okay? And I also keep time. And I do a lot of things with different devices. I can never be accused of someone who's not listening to my guest. But don't you find that concerning, 2-a-days? I mean, that's the Supreme Court Justice of the United States.
It is. But don't you think some of it's just to rile up bases a little bit? to get people out to vote.
Well, that's my point.
I know, but you're right on the fact that it might trigger one person, crazy person, to do something crazy. And yes, that's absolutely scary. But I mean, it is just kind of to rile up, and on both sides too, Democrat and Republican. I mean, I just think it's a little bit of a way to, just be a little radical and rile someone up for the sake of getting out to vote.
Both sides, Democrat and Republican. Well, again, I want to be self-aware. Are Republicans convincing their base that we're on the edge of dystopia? And if we're being real, we do. Yeah, we talk about that. We're right and they're wrong. No, I'm kidding. That's where you immediately want to go. Exactly. Your instinct is like that's. Both sides want to say that immediately. No, see, the real difference is we're right and they're wrong.
See, here's where you're wrong.
Correct.
Where you're wrong. Yeah.
I don't know, man. I think if you say the democracy is at stake at all times, and you say that one man is the guy taking us there, you are forgiving yourself of every manner of sin. They've forgiven themselves for burning the First Amendment to the United States Constitution. They've forgiven themselves from discrediting the Supreme Court of the United States. They've forgiven themselves from saying that their opponents are Nazis. They've forgiven themselves for everything, all the way up to what I'm getting at. Something bad is on the verge of happening. You can't keep talking like this. You can't keep undercutting the institutions of the constitutional republic that is the United States. You can't keep it up without some consequence. And I don't know what it will be. And I don't know. Maybe in the end, maybe it's just Joe Biden continuing to paint himself orange. I don't know. Maybe it just gets oranger and oranger, and he becomes Donald Trump. Let's do one more. Come on, it's just fun. Let's do one more orange man bad, orange man good meme.
That sounds good.
Look at me, Jack. Come on, Jack. Now, I'm the orange man now. That's from
Captain.
Hold on, I can do it.
Captain.
It's Tom Hanks, Captain.
I can't think of it now. Jeez.
Ahab? No.
Do you know it, Patrick? What's the
Moby
movie?
Dick.
I could tell you, but I'm not gonna.
Oh.
Really? You're just going to let us flounder while we broadcast?
Yeah. I know.
Phillips.
Captain Phillips, yeah.
Captain Phillips.
I'm the captain
And
now.
they grayed out Donald Trump. By the way, they're going to replace Joe Biden. That's another thing that makes it all feel big. It all feels huge. Everything. Carl Bernstein, Woodward and Bernstein was on CNN. I just find this. How about this? Okay, they're willing to burn down the First Amendment, the Supreme Court of the United States, checks and balances, constitutional republic, and of course, the truth. They're willing to burn down the truth to save democracy. Listen to Carl Bernstein talking about, you know what? We kind of knew this about Joe Biden. He's losing his marbles.
Well, these are people, several of them, who are very close to President Biden, who love him, have supported him, and been among them are some people who have raised a lot of money for him. And they are adamant that what we saw the other night, the Joe Biden we saw, is not a one-off, that there have been 15, 20 occasions in the last year and a half when the president has appeared somewhat as he did in that horror show that we witnessed. And what's so significant is the people that this is coming from, and also how many people around the president are aware of such incidents, including some reporters, incidentally, who have witnessed some of them.
Well, why haven't we been talking about it? Why now? Bernstein, by the way, I think he's there's no way that's only happened 15 times in a year and a half. It's just not the way it works. I'm no doctor, but just not the way it works. Speaking of no doctor, and speaking of the leftists that we've had on, David Pagman, what do you say now, right? What do you say now? Mm-hmm. Oh, the president is great. He's sharp. He's not on PEDs. Burden of proof on you. Shockingly, this came from Jake Tapper. Have you seen him quoting 1984, what I was alluding to yesterday? The final act of the party is to ask you to set aside the evidence of your eyes and your ears. It's the greatest sacrifice, but the final act of the party. That's coming from Jake Tapper, who was in the room with Joe Biden. And nobody was saying this before the debate, but now they've all seen the light and come to Jesus. And that's insanity. That's untruthful. That's another thing that's being willing to sacrifice to save our democracy. Carl Bernstein didn't know this before the debate. These reporters didn't know this before the debate. These staffers around Joe Biden didn't know this before the debate. Man, they are toying with every foundational element of this country, including our national security. I did see another, who was it, Democrat, I think it was Jay Johnson, what was he, former DHS Secretary Jay Johnson under Obama, say, I'm fine voting for Biden because he'll have all these people around him. So now, meaning good people, good handlers, good chief of staff. By the way, I think a lot of people probably instinctually who are going to stick with Biden are thinking that down deep. Mm-hmm. Oh, he'll be supported. So let me just get this straight. I just want to see if I understand what you're arguing to me. In order to save democracy, we're going to lean on an oligarchy, unelected oligarchy. There's a lot of things we're doing to save democracy. And the point I'm coming back to in the end is, I wonder what you won't do to quote-unquote save democracy. I wonder what you won't do to stop Donald Trump. Because increasingly, it feels like the answer is, I will do everything. Everything. And over the next couple of months, it feels like we should expect anything and everything. Something bad, a dystopia, under the banner of save democracy. Can we, here on the Will Cain Show, save U.S. soccer? It's important to me. It's important. No, it's important. Come on, it's important to the United States. Next on the Will Cain Show.
The Fox News Podcast Network.
I'm Emily Campagno, and this is the Fox True Crime Podcast.
And I had nothing to do with her disappearance, but people still accuse me of it.
I sit down with the people who lived the nightmares.
I was in shock. I was just devastated.
The investigators who tirelessly worked on the case.
I feel for their families, and I really hope that they can catch this guy.
Bringing you closer to the story than you ever thought possible.
Listen and follow now at foxnewspodcasts.com or wherever you get your podcasts.
July 16th on Fox. We're deep in the heart of Texas, where the game's biggest stars align for the Midsummer Classic.
Stars are everywhere. Caught by Aaron Judge. He is Superman. Harper, the swing of his life.
The MLB All-Star Game, July 16th on Fox.
The world of business moves fast. Stay on top of it with the Fox Business Rundown. Every Monday and Friday, Fox Business reporters, anchors, and hosts will bring you beneath the stock market speculation and boardroom drama to tell you about the biggest business stories of today. Whether you're on Main Street or Wall Street, Fox Business is invested in you. Listen to the Fox Business Rundown every Monday and Friday at foxbusinesspodcasts.com, Apple, Spotify, or wherever you download your favorite podcasts.
It's almost Independence Day. Maybe we should watch Independence Day. It's the Will Cain Show, streaming live at foxnews.com, on the Fox News YouTube channel, the Fox News Facebook page. Market to market, coast to coast on terrestrial radio, on demand, Spotify, Apple, and YouTube. Just hit subscribe. On Facebook, Jim Cedar says, President Biden is not in a right state of mind and not able to run our country. Over on YouTube, Rodney Miller says, Joe Biden looks like his ice cream truck blew up. I don't get that one. I don't know why it has to be an ice cream truck, but something blew up in his face. But why is ice cream orange?
Because
what does it have to do with
orange sherbet?
So you hear ice cream and your mind goes to orange sherbet?
Yeah.
I would think like his makeup kit blew up, or I don't know.
It made sense to me instantly. I was just like, oh yeah, orange sherbet from the ice cream truck, or orange ice cream.
Like if we went to an ice cream shop, the four of us right now.
Yeah.
If you give me 10 orders, orange sherbet doesn't enter the top 10.
I don't know. I
thought
thought
one of you an orange sherbet. Would you go orange sherbet under any circumstances? Like I give you 5 picks. Does it make your top 5?
No. Top 10, yes.
Top 10?
Yeah.
Orange sherbet?
Yeah.
Do we even have orange
they
sherbet?
drop off after like 6 or 7 choices. They get real.
Yeah.
They get real colory and funky.
You
Not
think
so
it gets?
great.
You think the slim pickings get slim?
Yeah.
One thing about ice cream is you can overdo it. I will say, you think you're going to go for the moose tracks, and then next thing you know, you're debating the orange sherbet, and then you realize the moose tracks is just doing a little too much. Colonel Ingus on YouTube says, Trump doesn't have to worry about the incompetent Dems. It's going to be the Republicans he has to watch. And Snowkeeper says, yes, Biden is running as a sure win for Trump. Let him run. I believe we have some interesting polling that has come out just recently. Young Establishment, James, always finger on the pulse of politics, gave us a poll. What is it, Young Establishment? Trump is up 6.
He's up 6 on Biden nationally.
49.
CNN poll. Although only up by 2 on Kamala Harris. He beats all the other potential Dems, but Kamala pulled a lot better in that poll than expected.
You just have to have her talk soon. And then
Yeah,
it'll go back up.
Very true.
She's out in these streets. That's what she called it. She's in these streets. Girl, they not like us. That's what she told Taraji Henderson before the BET Awards. Yeah, don't worry about Kamala. Kamala will handle her own polling. All right, can we save U.S. soccer? Before you inundate the comments with who cares, just hear me out. I root for USA. Man, it could be curling. I root for USA. All right? Jingoistic that way, like the Olympics. And I do like soccer. My boys play soccer. Now, here's what we always hear, and we hear it inside the Will Cain Show. Oh, it's a sport for girls. It's a sissy sport. No one cares about soccer, yada, yada, yada. Okay, whatever, dude. I mean, what am I going to say? United States lost last night to Uruguay. That was very fancy of me. I usually say Uruguay. The United States lost to Uruguay. A horrifically refereed game. If anybody watched it, I mean, it felt on the edge of corruption. It was really bad. And I know. I bellyache about refereeing when it comes to my teams. It's part of the privilege of being a fan. But this one was like universally, everybody's like, wow, this is really bad. Christian Pulisic, United States, top player, our star, went to shake hands with the ref after the game. The ref wouldn't shake hands with Pulisic. Just super odd. But the point is the United States shouldn't have been in this position anyway. They shouldn't have needed to win against Uruguay, who's a better team, but we should be able to beat them. It's what we're supposed to be. Supposed to be ready to arrive at the scene of competing with Brazil and Argentina, and we can't beat Panama. We couldn't beat Panama, and that's why we're out of Copa America. And the point is we've been talking about this now since the 1970s. Like, when are we going to arrive? When are we going to be good enough? When are we we don't have to be a top 5, but when are we going to be a real competitor in the world of soccer? And we should be. It's an embarrassment. The United States has 330 million people. It's enough people that we can get good at anything and everything. All right, now maybe the argument is, well, we can get good at individual sports. Out of 330 million people, we can find, how many people are on a curling team? Like 4? I don't know. We can find 4 curlers. We can find 1 ski jumper. We can find whatever that other countries are more passionate and culturally devoted to. I always do find that fascinating. Why is Norway always the best at ski jumping? Jamaica, despite per capita, always the best at sprinting. But when it comes to the world of soccer, we know that everyone else is super dedicated culturally, and we're not. But it doesn't matter. Out of 330 million people, we should be able to find the athletes and the dedication and the training good enough to compete on the world stage. That is something that Alexi Lawless passionately laid out. Famous U.S. men's national team player from the 1990s and Fox Sports soccer analyst, laid out right here on the Will Cain Show.
I'm sick of making excuses and I'm sick of whining. And when it comes to this U.S. team, they have been given everything, by the way, from a very young age. And this is not begrudging by any stretch of the imagination. I think that they are worth it given their ability and their talent and the depth that we now have. But with that comes higher expectations. And so I think it is fair for us to expect to see this team do things that have not been done in the past, especially as it relates to 2026. Because, well, at the end of the day, this is about winning a men's World Cup. Well, the only way you're going to win the men's World Cup is by beating the elites of the world and putting yourself in that position. And too often, when the big games have come up against the elites and teams that are better than us, we have not been able to step up and have those types of seminal moments.
And the teams that are worse than us, losing to Panama. Granted, we played with only 10 men because one got kicked off with a red card 18 minutes into the game. But my boys play soccer, so I see the soccer culture world, and it is dedicated. There is a lot of, you can talk about all the problems, and there are pay to play, so forth. There's a lot of really good athletes playing soccer. And, you know, two-a-days, youngest Establishment James Tinfoil. When we were younger, like two-a-days was saying earlier today, it was all like you said stoners. You're not going to be good at it. I don't think you're going to be good at any sport if you're a full-on stoner. But the soccer dudes were a little different. You know, they were a little alternative. Mm-hmm. I'm just here to tell you, the kids that play against my sons, both in New York and in Dallas, these are not the third-picking athletes. You know, these aren't the kids that washed out at football, right? Or washed out at lacrosse. These are kids that chose to be into soccer at a young age. Chose, right? And as such, there's enough alpha mentality. It's not like, oh, they're the soft kid. No. So I don't understand. I see James making faces.
I don't know. Have you been around the travel baseball circuit or the travel football circuit?
You just think they're just bigger alpha dudes, huh?
You're in Texas, so you're getting the best of the best.
Of what?
Of the
athletes,
folks and the athletes,
football players.
Of all of those sports?
Yeah, all across the board.
I will say, my kid's school right now. Like, I live in Dallas, but in Texas at large, obviously football. Lacrosse is rising so fast. Lacrosse, like way above baseball. Well, in Dallas, it maybe more rural areas. It's baseball second. Lacrosse is getting so popular, man. Of like the stud athletes choosing, in many cases, to walk away from football to pursue lacrosse. And soccer is not as cool. True, like, you know, letter jacket, cool. Like, soccer's not as cool. That is 100% true. But back to the 330 million thing. There's enough that the dudes playing soccer are like legit athletes. So I don't understand why we can't hone that percentage of our population into competing with Panama, beating Panama, smoking Panama. Or how many people live in Denmark? You know? Switzerland.
We could buy those countries.
Well, it's just no excuse.
It's because, I think you were talking about with Alexi Lawless or somebody on the show recently, it's because you're playing so many different sports and you're not focusing just on soccer. You know, all these guys.
That's not true though anymore.
Yeah, but I don't know. But like,
we always talk about specialization. It's a problem. We always say, everybody specializes. Baseball, soccer. Everybody does now.
Yeah,
that's what they do.
I don't know.
From a young age.
No, but there's a lot of guys men and women, in the United States who are trying all the different sports from the beginning, like just trying tennis, soccer, lacrosse, baseball, everything. You try it and not focusing at such a young age on one thing, which I think is different overseas in, say, England or France or something like that.
We've boomeranged back.
To what?
I think a lot of parents have realized that the let's throw all our eggs in one sport was probably not such a great idea when it comes to injury as well as things that other sports can help you with.
I guess we don't have kids, but yeah.
We have not.
I'll report
we
back
have not
in 10
boomeranged
years.
back. 24-year-old James. We have not boomeranged back. No, people are all in on one sport. They are, for better or worse. They just are. The only kids that get away with it are the extremely good athletes that can walk into any time whenever they want. It's kind of one of those weird things. Like, and then we talked. The image that James has painted of himself. I'm just going to tell you something. You better be an absolute stud. Like, if we ever get in any type of athletic situation, you better be. The other three of us better be going, how did you not go pro?
Yeah.
Because you are fashioning an image for yourself that is out of hand. Out of hand.
I'm waiting on the invite. Here we go.
Well, everybody's super excited to send the invite too. The stud athlete can walk into any team. at any point and play any sport, but everybody else is specializing. And my point is, in America now, you have an ecosystem of specialization where you think the training would be good enough. Landon Donovan made the argument to us last week that it's too focused on winning and not enough in development. Maybe that's kind of interesting. Who cares about winning tournaments in soccer? You should be trying to produce individual studs. But that would apply to every sport. That would apply to baseball. That would apply to any AAU basketball. It would apply to all of them. You would think that would inhibit us in all sports. But we are trying to play catch up in soccer. And culture matters. Culture does matter. Those cultures care more. But again, I'm just playing a numbers game. That's all I keep coming back to. Economy and population. We have enough to spin off quality competitiveness at any sport we so choose. The rebuttal to me is, why isn't India good at soccer? They got a lot of people. Well, they don't have the economy we have, right? Why isn't China great at basketball? They got enough people. They seem to care about basketball. And what it does is reemphasize culture. Culture, it matters. What are we doing here? Height? Is that what he did with his hands?
The numbers would show demographically that.
I was like, don't do that.
The numbers would back it up.
But again, out of 1 billion Chinamen, you're going to be able to find a few 6'5"ers,
Yeah, sure.
Maybe not enough to filter out 6'5", athletic, understand the game, everything. You know what I mean?
True.
So I don't know. I just don't think we have an excuse. I'm with Alexi, and I'm tired of it, and I don't know if I can fix it. I don't know if you can fix it. What do you got, tinfoil? But we should be good at soccer, period.
Well,
and we start, number one, let's just get this out of the way. Fire Greg Berhalter. You start there. You got to get a new coach. Go ahead, tinfoil.
The American, apparently we have a national American football team, and we just lost to Japan. So maybe it is possible to, for Asian countries to come up and beat us at our best. Maybe
Didn't
China
we just
could.
do this?
What?
Didn't we just do this in cricket? Didn't we just beat Pakistan in cricket? Didn't I?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. They said for us to beat Pakistan in cricket would be like Pakistan to beat us in basketball. It's that big. Like if we woke up tomorrow and the dream team was together and some Pakistani basketball team smoked us or beat us, we'd be like, what in the world just happened? We just did this to Pakistan in cricket.
If you look at
there's only like 4 nations that care about cricket.
If you look
Pakistan's
at the
one
roster,
of them.
though, it was all Pakistani and Indian immigrants that now live in the United States.
Was it? It wasn't what we think it is.
There's no white.
He
dudes
broke
on
down
that
the
team.
roster.
You just pull it up and you're like, oh.
But shouldn't we do that with soccer? Like we don't have enough immigrants to come in to do soccer. Like we have Messi
We do.
now. Can't we?
Half those dudes are like getting like passports under the table to play for America. Not half. There was a time when it was like that. We've tried to game the system. Bring over some dudes who. How's your English? Heavily accented.
Football bueno.
But I don't know, man. It's just. And the last thing I want to hear is who cares? Last thing I want to hear is from young establishment James. Go back to your travel baseball circuit. We'll see you. We'll see you at darts in the bar one day. All right, that's going to do it for me today here on the Will Cain Show. Hit subscribe, Apple, Spotify, YouTube, and we will see you again next time.